Now, the greatest radio shows of all time.
Suspense.
The Shadow Node.
Washington calling David Harding, counter-spy.
Classic radio theater.
The Great Gildersleeve.
Fibber McGee and Molly.
Dragnet. Gunsmoke.
The Lone Ranger.
Now, step back into our time machine with your host, Wyatt Cox.
Good evening, friends of the Inner Sanctum.
We go back 69 years this hour. Radio's outstanding theater of thrills, Suspense, from June 15th, 1954. Joseph Kearns, starring in an episode entitled The Earth is Made of Glass. And we thank you for joining us on this Sure Happy It's Thursday, 15th day of June, 166th day of the year, and we have 199 days remaining until we get to the end of the year. Benjamin Franklin on this date in 752 experimented by flying a kite during a thunderstorm. The result was a little spark that showed the relationship between lightning and electricity. 1775, George Washington appointed head of the Continental Army by the Second Continental Congress. Happy birthday, Arkansas. You became the 25th state of the Union on this date in 1836. And in 1844, Charles Goodyear granted a patent for the process that strengthens rubber. In order to establish a military burial ground signed by Secretary of War Edwin M. Stanton, on this date in 1864, the location later became known as Arlington National Cemetery. Henry O. Flipper became the first African-American to graduate from West Point on this date in 1877. The House of Representatives approved the annexation of Hawaii on this date in 1898. And it was in 1911, the Computing Tabulating Recording Company Incorporated on this date in 1911 in New York. The company later renamed International Business Machines, IBM. President Wilson signed a bill on this date in 1916 incorporating the Boy Scouts of America. And in 1944, American forces began their successful invasion of Saipan during World War II. What was called the country version of Laugh-In Hee Haw, premiering on this date in 1965, ran for 2 years on CBS, another 20 in first-run syndication. King Hussein of Jordan married 26-year-old America Lisa Halaby on this date in 1979. She would become Queen Noor. In 1981, the U.S. agreed to provide Pakistan with $3 billion in military and economic aid. In the capital city of Stanley on this date in 1982, the Falklands War ended as Argentinian troops surrendered to the British. 1983, the Supreme Court reinforced its position on abortions by striking down state and local restrictions on abortions. Now, Pravda, the communist newspaper on this date in 1986, reported the chief engineer of the Chernobyl nuclear plant dismissed for mishandling that big incident there. Now, in 1992, Vice President Dan Quayle instructed a student to spell potato with an E on the end during a spelling bee. He had relied on a faulty flashcard that had been written by the student's teacher. Now, one would think the vice president would know better. One would think the teacher should have known better. All right, in 1994, Israel and the Vatican establishing full diplomatic relations in 1994. A divided Supreme Court on this date in 2006 made it easier for police to barge into homes and seize evidence without knocking or waiting. 2006, Microsoft chairman Bill Gates said he would transition from day-to-day responsibilities at the company to concentrate on their foundation's charitable work. Bob Barker ended his 35-year run as host of The Price is Right on this date in 2007. Of course, you can see a lot of those shows on a lot of the streaming services now, like Pluto TV and I think Roku Channel has those Barker years up as well. In fact, I understand Pluto's going to start running some of the newer shows on their streaming service with the fella now, Drew Carey. And also on this date in 2022, it was a year ago today that we laid Internet Explorer to rest after 26 years. Its new browser, Microsoft Edge, is what they recommend. Okay, passing away on this date in history, fine guitar-songwriter Wes Montgomery, Meredith Willson, the man behind The Music Man. Also, Ella Fitzgerald passing away on this date, pro wrestler Dirty Dick Murdoch, and also Hume Cronin, such a fine actor. Also Casey Kasem, also Kirk Kerkorian, the businessman, and Franco Zeffirelli, all passing away on this date in history. Among birth dates to note today include musician, bandleader David Rose, pianist Errol Garner, Mario Cuomo, also Waylon Jennings, fine country musician, Harry Nilsson, and you may not know him by the name of Jim Varney, but I'm sure you remember him as Ernest.
Hey, Vern. Hey, ain't you a little heavy to be working up here? You know what you need, Vern? It's some of this Purity Milk's new Purity Light. It's 99% fat-free, Vernon, and protein fortified. And that's what you need to be, Vern. 99% fat-free and fortified. And that way these roof beams won't buckle like this when you're up here working!
The rubbery-faced Jim Varney, born on this date in history. From Kansas, not from the state. Well, I think he's from the state, but we're talking about the musical group. Steve Walsh, 72 years old today. Somebody's knocking. Terry Gibbs, 69 today. Jim Belushi, also 69. From Airplane, Julie Haggerty is 68. From Mad About You and Twister, Helen Hunt, 60 years old today. From Friends, Courtney Cox, no relation, 59. From the Friday series of movies, Ice Cube, the rapper, is 54. From King of Queens, Leah Remini is 53. From Doogie Howser, MD, and How I Met Your Mother, Neil Patrick Harris is 50. And the WWE's Bayley, dramatically, horribly underused, 34 years of age today. Those just a few of the people celebrating the 15th day of June as their birthday. And if this happens to be your birthday...
Hi, we're the Four Freshmen, and we just want to say... Happy birthday to you!
From 69 years ago today, June 15th, 1954, Suspense, Joseph Kearns, starring in The Earth is Made of Glass. That's coming up next on this Thursday, Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox on your favorite station. Hey gang, just a note to let you know that we've notified all of our radio stations that our final episode of Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox will be broadcast on all of our radio stations on June 30th of 2023. It is not something of your radio station. It's not because you haven't been responsive. It's because my doctors have said I need to take time off, and I need to take a significant time off. I can no longer work 90 hours a week. It's just that simple. So to let you know, listen to the shows, enjoy the shows while you can. Go to our friend Ted at RadioMemories.com. He supplies a lot of shows. And go to our webpage at classicradio.stream and learn how you can build your own classic radio collection. But again, June 30th will end Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox here on your favorite station on this Thursday. Episodes of Suspense both today and tomorrow. I'll tell you about tomorrow's show, which, well, features Jack Benny. I'll tell you about that a little later. But somebody who made a lot of appearances on the Jack Benny show as predominantly Ed, who was the guard of Jack Benny's vault. And not quite as serious an episode as this. 69 years ago, June 15th, 1954, Joseph Kearns, starring in The Earth is Made of Glass.
And now, tonight's presentation from radio's outstanding theater of thrills, Suspense. Tonight, the story of a murder, deliberate, cold, motiveless, in which we will examine its effects on our protagonist. The story is called The Earth is Made of Glass.
Good morning, Dr. West.
Oh, good morning, Miss Adams.
I've brought down the night charts from the 4th floor.
And I'll look them over. What sort of night did you have?
Fairly quiet, Doctor. No new cases.
If there were, I don't know where you'd put them.
Well, we have one vacant bed this morning, 436.
Mr. Steele?
Yes, he died about 4 a.m.
Surprised he held on that long.
I thought you might be upset, Doctor. I mean, the day supervisor, Miss Rosenberg, told me you and Mr. Steele were either related or very close friends.
No, not at all. Mr. Steele suffered certain delusions.
Just before he died, he asked me to give you this, Dr. West. It's some kind of diary or journal. He said he owed it to you, that it was in compensation.
Very well, leave it on the desk. I'll ask who's in charge of settling his estate.
All right, Doctor. I looked at the first few pages. It's very strange.
Oh?
Well, I'm going off duty.
Very well, Miss Adams. I'll see you tomorrow.
Yes, Doctor.
The Journal of Richard Thomas Steele. Strange. He tore out a good many pages. Everything up to July 26th. That's only a month ago. Why on earth did he leave it to me? Who do you think I was? Poor devil, there was certainly something torturing him. July 26th, an extremely depressing day. From early morning on, the air was hot, heavy, sticky. I stayed indoors.
I stayed indoors with the blinds drawn, spent 3.5 hours arranging and cataloging a new shipment of books. I must say I gloated over the volume of Bacon, Gold Leaf Uncut, 1836, a treasure. In the afternoon, I ventured out to play chess with Eliot. He's an uninspired player and a worse conversationalist. I'm appalled that a man of Eliot's pretensions still wallows in 18th and 19th century thought patterns, twaddle, and sentimentality. He's totally out of step with the times, blindly determined to keep his mind closed to any developments in science. It was so apparent in that argument we had over Ralph Waldo Emerson. I noticed he had a volume of Emerson's essays, a cheap reprint, and I thumbed through it. There was one paragraph in the essay called Compensation, which especially annoyed me. I must have snorted because Eliot was instantly on the defensive. When I asked him if he actually believed such claptrap, he fairly leaped at me.
Certainly, I believe there's compensation, Richard. Tit for tat, measure for measure, love for love. Whatever a man does comes back to him.
Good for good, evil for evil, so that if I should commit a crime, I would of necessity be punished?
In one way or another, yes.
You mean that I would in some way suffer in compensation for my evil deed?
Isn't that what Emerson says?
I want to know what you believe.
I believe what he says.
Well, let's read what he says. Discounting the poetry and all the emotional overtones. Emerson says, commit a crime and the earth is made of glass. Commit a crime and it seems as if a coat of snow fell on the ground, such as reveals in the woods the track of every partridge and fox and squirrel and mole. You cannot recall the spoken word, you cannot wipe out the foot track, you cannot draw up the ladder, so as to leave no inlet or clue. Some damning circumstance always transpires. The laws and substances of nature, water, snow, wind, gravitation, become penalties to the thief. Well, Eliot.
Beautiful, isn't it?
Don't be evasive, Eliot. We're discussing his theory.
Well, I don't see how there can be any argument. We know
a good deal more than Emerson, you old fellow, especially about the laws and substances of nature.
They surely haven't changed.
No, but we've taken them into the laboratory. We've tested the substances and we've mastered the laws, put them under our control. The scientific method, Eliot. Why, it cancels out every word your friend Emerson wrote.
The scientific method. Is it an open sesame to all knowledge? Does it make us gods? There are still mysteries we can never fathom, Richard. For instance, the mysteries in ourselves.
In our souls?
Yes, in our souls. And whatever it is we have that cannot be weighed or tested, yet which manifests itself in every good or evil thing we do. Say you commit a murder.
Say I do.
A perfect crime. For I grant you that a man of your intelligence can outwit the police. Nevertheless, you could not escape from, well, let's call it your conscience.
But, say I commit a laboratory murder.
What?
Well, let me put it this way. To catch a murderer, the police first set out to discover some connection between the murderer and his victim, which leads them to the motive for the crime. And when a murderer is caught by his own conscience, it is also through his connection with his victim, his emotional connection. But in a pure, abstract murder, one occurring in an emotional vacuum...
Impossible.
The two participants would be connected only by the unadulterated act of killing.
But isn't every man connected first of all with himself? I mean, a man renders judgment on himself. In his soul, I would say.
Oh, what superstitious claptrap, Elliot. Apparently you're completely unable to grasp my premise. Theoretically, a laboratory murder is entirely possible. Well, why not actually? It'd be very interesting to test the theory and find out. July 28th. The weather continues warm, humidity high. This is the last summer I shall spend in New York. Today, I roamed around my library, read a little, thought a great deal. It's odd how I keep referring back to my conversation with Elliot. Abstract murder. A laboratory murder. I jotted down one or two theoretical points today. An amusing project in such hot weather. What utter nonsense to think of conducting a laboratory experiment in writing on paper. Why, it's a contradiction in terms. The core of the scientific method is to prove theory in life. So, let us proceed actually to create a pure murder. A murder committed, as I said to Eliot, in a material and emotional vacuum. A murder of someone with whom I have no connection, whom I have no possible reason to kill. But I will decide how to choose my victim after I've made all the other preparations and have purchased the necessary equipment.
Gloves, sir? What kind of gloves?
Oh, any kind of gloves.
But I mean, what do you want them for? Driving, gardening?
I want gloves I can use for almost anything.
Oh, well, now, we call these utility gloves.
Oh, yes. Those are excellent.
Yes. What size, sir?
Any size. Medium.
Now, these look just about...
No, I don't want to try them on. I'll take them as they are. Just wrap them up. You know, I'm very fond of a genuine old-fashioned hardware store like this one.
Lots of people tell me that, sir. Anything special you're looking for?
No, I suppose I'm just browsing.
Oh, yes.
What are those, ice picks?
Yes, sir.
Quite a selection. Screwdrivers and... Oh, there's something I want.
A knife?
One of those.
Well, to be fair with you, sir, those are pretty poor knives. That's why they're marked down. Too big for paring, too small for carving.
Just knives.
That's about it.
The best possible recommendation. I'll take one. A meaningless knife, all-purpose gloves, knife and gloves new, factory-made, uncontaminated by human association, smelling only of the harsh, impersonal machines which turned them out. My first safeguards against the intrusion of emotion. And now, to complete my plans, who will it be? I must never see his or her face. I must not know his or her name, age, occupation, thoughts, or desires. I must come into contact with this victim as casually as though we were blown together by the wind. There can be no selection, no volition on my part, except the elementary volition necessary to raise my arm to kill. July 30th. The exact record of what has occurred. I must write it down now while it's fresh in my mind. I'll be absolutely precise and objective. Very well, then. At exactly 10 p.m. tonight, I left my house wearing the new gloves and carrying the knife in my right-hand coat pocket. I walked an undetermined number of blocks, turning corners at random, taking care to observe no street signs or landmarks. I observed only one thing, that there were many people on the street. In fact, I became aware that I was pushing through a rather dense crowd. I walked on with difficulty, but not once did I allow myself to become conscious of the exact nature of my surroundings. Then, at last, I found my progress through the crowd blocked by what I can only describe as a human back. I raised the knife and drove it into the back with all my force. I continued walking without haste, pausing only a fraction of a second to hear.
He's dead. He's dead.
He's dead, yes. I paused just long enough to hear, thus confirmed, my unqualified belief that without any possible consequence to myself, I had taken another human being's life.
You are listening to Mr. Joseph Kearns in Sylvia Richards' Study in Motive, The Earth is Made of Glass. Tonight's presentation in radio's outstanding theater of thrills, Suspense.
June 15th, 1954, on Classic Radio Theater, an episode of Suspense starring Joseph Kearns and The Earth is Made of Glass. I made a mistake earlier. We do not have we have an episode of Suspense tomorrow, but not in this hour. Tomorrow during this hour, we will hear Jack Benny in an episode from 1940, a Father's Day episode in which it's their last show of the 1939-40 season, and Henry Aldrich, who will be doing the summer show, shows up. Alrighty, we thank you for tuning in to Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. The news from 69 years ago today when we continue, but first, these important messages from your favorite radio station. Just going to take a minute here to tell you about the big savings going on now, the clearance sale at MyPillow.com. And you know, I've talked about how in my office I have a pair of My Slippers, and they're really comfortable, and they're on clearance right now. The MyPillow.com slippers, $25 a pair, limit 10. And I would buy 3 or 4 more pairs. Unfortunately, they're out of my size. They also have sheets, pillowcases, clothing items, all on special right now. Go to MyPillow.com, click on the clearance tab at the top of the page, use my promo code Wyatt, or call 1-800-928-4715. Limited sizes remaining in the MyPillow slippers, limited colors on other items. MyPillow.com, clearance tab, promo code Wyatt, 1-800-928-4715. Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox on your favorite station, an episode of Suspense, as it was originally broadcast on Tuesday, June 15th, 1954. In the newspapers of that Tuesday, 69 years ago, these were some of the headlines. 6 tons of Swiss anti-aircraft ammunition consigned to leftist-governed Guatemala have been held up in Germany at the request of the American officials, according to the U.S. High Commission. High Commission officials insist the ammunition was live, although a representative of the Free Port of Hamburg said it was marked dummy ammunition, meaning the shells were without explosives. The Federal Civil Defense Administration last night estimated at least 5.3 million people were killed and 2.2 million injured in yesterday's mock atomic bombing attack by an unidentified enemy on major U.S. cities. Val Peterson, Federal Civil Defense Administrator, said last night, hours after the mythical attack had been started, today's nationwide civil defense test has thus far proved effectively what we'd assumed. The nation's civil defense team still has a long way to go in the field of operational readiness. Money from the missing $75,000 ransom in the kidnap of Mrs. Evelyn Smith found in a shoebox about 100 yards from where the 41-year-old suspect was arrested Friday. A police source said it was virtually certain that all $75,000 was in the box and had not been touched after a preliminary count had been made. Francis P. Carr, the strong, silent man of the McCarthy Army hearings, broke his silence yesterday and gave a detailed sworn endorsement of blackmail charges leveled by Senator McCarthy against high Army officials. The 37-year-old Carr, executive director of McCarthy's Senate Investigation Subcommittee, testified Army counselor John G. Adams persistently dangled favors for Private G. David Shine as bait to lure off the McCarthy investigators of alleged subversion in the Army. British actress Simone Silva, who caused a flock of photographers to fall into the sea when she stripped to the waist to pose with Robert Mitchum on the French Riviera, was ordered yesterday to leave the U.S. within 60 days. District Director of Immigration and Naturalization Service, Herman Landon, said that although Miss Silva came here only on a pleasure visa, she signed a film contract and is receiving a salary. Those some of the day's top news stories as reported in the newspapers of Tuesday, June 15th, 1954, on your radio Suspense, and we'll hear the conclusion following these messages on this Thursday edition of Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox on your favorite station. We'll wrap up this week of Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox, as I mentioned earlier, with Jack Benny from 83 years ago, June 16th, 1940. It's the last show of the 1939-1940 season, and Jack gets angry at the idea that Henry Aldrich will replace him for the summer. That'll be coming up on Friday's Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox, online anytime at classicradio.stream. Now the conclusion of Suspense, The Earth is Made of Glass, starring Joseph Kearns, as it was originally broadcast 69 years ago today, June 15th, 1954.
And now, we bring back to our Hollywood soundstage Mr. Joseph Kearns in Elliot Lewis's production of The Earth is Made of Glass, a tale well calculated to keep you in suspense.
August 1st. All day I felt enormously stimulated, elated by the success of my experiment. The very intensity of the sun outside my study has added to my feeling of well-being. Tomorrow, I shall complete my notes on this extraordinary and, I'm sure, valuable psychological study. Today, I shall relish to the full my mood of achievement. How I regret that I can't tell old Elliot. I can picture the disbelief and horror on his face if he knew. Compensation. Oh, tut-tut, Mr. Emerson. August 3rd. Yesterday I was unable to write in my journal because of the excessive heat and because I suffered from a headache and a vibration in my ears. Today I'm forcing myself to write, to have on record the final control in my experiment, my laboratory murder. To assure complete ignorance of the identity of my victim, I have read no newspaper and will not read any for a period of 2 or 3 weeks. Nor will I hold conversation with anyone apt to be morbidly interested in murder as reported in the tabloid press. August 4th, the heat is unbearable, and all day I have felt that odd, heavy vibration in my head, now also on my arms and body. It is almost constant in a 1-2, 1-2 rhythm. Sometimes it's a sound as well as a vibration, like the distant sound of the sea. I must consult a doctor. Last night I was kept awake by the throbbing in my head, and toward morning I was subjected to a new agony. Very softly at first, but louder and louder, like voices heard in delirium. My head became filled with an almost hysterical babbling. Not for an instant have the voices stopped or even paused. They seemed to keep time with the reverberation of my heart. August 8th. I have no need to consult a doctor, for I know the nature of my illness. Last night, trying to drive the unspeakable uproar from my brain, I turned to music. But when I put the record on the machine, Schnabel's recording of Beethoven's F minor sonata, the Appassionata, the sound in the voices rose to a bedlam, shrieking, drowned out the music. And then I knew, in spite of every precaution, my laboratory murder had not taken place in a vacuum. Two things had penetrated my shield. First, the voices echoing in my ears, the fragments of speech about a concert, are the same voices I heard in that crowd, rising again and again to the climax of a woman's scream. And the pulsing sound I hear when I drove that knife home into a beating heart, its vital rhythm, the mighty leap and contraction of the heart's muscle on the blade of the knife, was transmitted back to me through my hand and remains indelibly recorded in the heartbeat of my own blood. August 11th. During the past hour, the incessant hammering of sound has receded, but I know this respite will be brief. Now, while I'm able to reason, I must discover where I erred and act swiftly to correct my error. There's no turning back. The death I caused is an accomplished fact, and each day I remember something more. Today, suddenly, like a photograph imprinted on my brain, I saw the black collar of his coat, his gray hat, and between his clipped, silky, reddish hair. And I had and still have an insatiable desire to turn his head around, see his face. Perhaps there's only one course for me to take, to reverse my plan, learn everything about my victim, every possible detail, create for myself a total portrait, and then discard it in its entirety. Learn his name, age, address, all the statistics of his life. Oh, I beg your pardon, miss. Where are the newspaper files?
What dates did you wish to see?
The week of July 30th.
Which paper?
The Times. I'll start with that.
Now, just a moment.
I want them for the whole week.
Yes. Well, here are all the copies for July, bound. And these loose ones are August, so far.
Oh, thank you.
Now, don't take them out of the reading room and return them to the desk when you're through, please.
Yes, thank you, I will. I opened the bound volume near the end and immediately saw his picture, page 1, center. The photograph was blurred, but without reading a word, I recognized him because he matched his hair. I mean, his face went with the back of the head I had seen. But before I could read the headline above the picture, someone spoke to me.
Pardon me, but may I look at that for just a moment?
Oh, it couldn't be. Standing at my shoulder, smiling, young, apparently as alive as I. But it was. He was there. He, my victim. The face in the paper and his face were the same. I swear they were the same.
I'm sorry to bother you. The girl at the desk told me you had that volume of the Times.
Yes.
There's an item I wanted to see in the July 30th issue. I'd wait, but I have to catch a train. If I'm late, my wife worries. You know how it is.
If I'm late, my wife worries. And that night, he was very late. Somewhere she's still waiting. Is that what he wanted me to know? Oh, but this is madness, hysteria. It's merely coincidence that the man in the library looks so much like him. He's dead. I know he's dead, and the dead neither walk nor speak. I must believe that. And I must go back to the library and find out where he lived, who and what he was. August 15th. I'm beyond all human help. I can confide the terrors I live with only to the pages of this journal. Today I went to Riverside, to a quiet street where he had lived, a tree-lined street running down to the Hudson River. I walked past his house, number 246 Palisades Road. A young woman on the front porch was trimming a morning glory vine. I ached to speak to her and ask her name, but the words stuck in my throat. I walked on. Then at the next corner, it happened again. I had paused at the curb when he came up behind me.
Pardon me, did you see the bus go by?
The bus.
Yes, the bus for Columbia. Say, what's wrong? Are you ill?
No. I'm all right.
You look like you're about to faint.
I'm all right.
I live right near here. If you want to lie down...
No, please, I'm all right.
My house is just down the block.
No, please, no,
Well, it's up to you. I can't make you come, but I hate to see you suffer needlessly.
August 20th. He doesn't like to see me suffer. Yet because of him, there isn't one day, 1 hour when I'm free from despair and fear. Yes, I accept him now. The dead do walk and speak. At least one dead man does. Whether actually or in the madness of my brain, I do not know. I only know that if I venture out of my house, inevitably he finds me. Sometimes he follows at a distance, sometimes waits ahead of me and beckons, and sometimes he meets me face to face as he did 2 days ago. I was going home and I stopped at the corner drugstore.
Evening, Mr. Steele. Malted?
No, I'll have a cup of coffee.
Sure thing. Yeah, this stool's vacant, next to this gentleman.
Thank you. Oh, no.
Go ahead, sit down.
Sure, sit down. I won't bite you.
Hey, here's your coffee.
No, Joe, I changed my mind.
Look, fella, if it's something about me...
What's wrong, Mr. Steele?
What do you want of me? Tell me what you want.
Me? I don't want anything.
Then why don't you leave me alone?
Somebody you know, Mr. Steele?
Apparently Mr. Steele thinks he knows me.
I do. Oh, I do.
Maybe so, mister, if you say so. But if you know me, it sure wasn't from this life. Must have been some other incarnation.
That was the evening of the 17th. And yesterday I'd started down the subway steps at 53rd Street. After looking all around to make sure he was nowhere near. And I'd only gone a few steps when I felt my arm jostled and I turned.
Oh, pardon me.
Please, what do you want?
What? What do you mean?
Why are you following me? I looked and I didn't see you, and then suddenly you struck my arm.
Maybe it's just fate or something. Anyway, I said I was sorry.
Then have mercy on me and go away.
Look, you don't own the subway.
Please, I beg of you.
Okay. Since my face seems to give you the willies, I'll be big-hearted. I'm in no hurry, got all the time in the world, so I'll wait and take the next train. Will that help?
You know it will.
I don't know and don't want to, but run along now before I change my mind.
August 26th. What will you have, quoth God? Pay for it and take it. Well, I have paid, and I must now take. For today I learned the cure for all my pain and torment. Today the course I have to take is clear. Today, on a deserted path nearing Fifth Avenue, I saw him again. He was coming directly toward me. I waited. I didn't even try to escape. Wait, I must ask.
Ask me what?
Only one question. I have to know.
I'm not sure
Please,
I understand.
We don't have to play games or pretend. I accept you. You're real.
Yes, I guess I'm real
And
enough.
only you can give me the answer.
Why me?
Please, I can't stand much more. Can't you see?
You look sick. If you want me to help you,
There's only one way you can help. Only one way. Just answer me.
Well, okay. Go ahead. I'll try.
Do you believe in compensation?
Now, what do you mean by that?
I mean, if someone does evil, if I have done evil, must I get evil in return?
Well, say it again.
Do you believe in good for good, evil for evil? Look, what about killing?
Well, there's all sorts of killing. In the war, I killed several people.
I know, but senseless killing with no reason. What's the compensation for that?
You've asked a pretty complicated question of a pretty simple guy. The only thing that comes to my mind right now is what it says in the Bible, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth.
That's what you believe?
Well, sure, I guess that's what I believe. Well, does that answer your question?
An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Command. The price asked by the only one who can ask it. Well, I'll pay. For I've learned that no event between two human beings can happen in a vacuum. We're all enmeshed, bound together through our blood in a pulsing net. And if one of us does violence to another, he does violence to himself. Very well. This price I'm glad to pay. I'm glad to die for his death. There's no other way.
Hello, Mr. Steele. Are you awake?
Where am I?
In the hospital. How do you feel?
Hospital. Oh, but I have to die.
Not if we can keep you from it.
But I have to.
Well, you did your best. And what a silly way to do it with a butcher knife.
I tell you, you have to let me die. Where's the doctor?
Now, lie down. Lie down, Mr. Steele. The doctor will be here in a minute.
I have to make him see. I promised.
You promised? Oh, Here's the doctor now. Dr. West, I'm having a little trouble.
Trouble, Miss Rosenberg? What seems to be the matter?
You. Forgive me. I tried to do as you said. I tried to die. Tell her, please, go away and leave me alone. I promise I'll die.
Miss Adams,
Yes, Dr. West?
did you finish reading his journal?
Yes, Doctor.
It's a weird document.
Certainly is. What made him think you were the man he killed?
That was the nature of his illness. He had a fixed delusion. He looked at me and saw someone else's face.
How strange.
Yes, but there's something stranger still. When I finished reading this, I called the police and checked.
About the murder?
Yes, and there was no such murder as he described. Not on July 30th, not ever.
He didn't kill anyone?
He never drove his knife into a living back. But Richard Steele killed. In his mind.
You mean just because he thought of killing?
No, he went further than that. He selected his victim.
Who?
The man whose picture was in the paper. I looked it up. It was on the front page of the book review section, the photograph of an author.
Someone he wanted to kill?
Yes, and even for that crime, because he wished for someone's death. The earth was made of glass. There was full compensation.
Whose death? Who was it?
The author of a new biography called Ralph Waldo Emerson in Our Times.
And who was it by?
The author was Richard Steele himself.
Suspense, in which Joseph Kearns was starred in The Earth is Made of Glass. Suspense is produced and directed by Elliott Lewis, with music composed by Lucien Morowick and conducted by Lud Gluskin. The Earth is Made of Glass was written for Suspense by Sylvia Richards. In tonight's story, Joseph Kearns was heard as Mr. Steele. Featured in the cast were Whitfield Connor, Charlotte Lawrence, Herb Butterfield, Jerry Hausner, Paula Winslow, and Junius Matthews.
June 15th, 1954, 69 years ago today, Suspense on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. Thanks so much for making us a part of your day. Thank this station, support their advertisers. Their kindness and courtesy allow us to be with you each and every time we roll around here on your favorite station. Our webpage, classicradio.stream. You can stream our shows. You can learn about building a classic radio collection of your own. You can find our social media links. You can also learn about building a classic radio collection of your own. You can also buy me a coffee. That Buy Me a Coffee money helps us acquire additional classic radio collections and helps us maintain our distribution channels. classicradio.stream. And thanks so much for tuning in. Tell all your friends the greatest radio shows of all time are right here at this spot on the dial. Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox on your favorite radio station.